Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having just an absolutely magnificent day today. Today we're taking a look at the sequel from 1941 as a part of Serial Saturday for you folks to the Green Hornets from 1940. This is called The Green Hornet Strikes Again. So I'll link you to it in the comments below in case you're interested in just watching it. For free online on YouTube. That's where I watched mine for the first time. I'd never seen The Green Hornet either, so I just watched them both. I finished it back to back. It's in another couple of chapters, so they add like an hour, roughly, to the run time. The previous one that does happen from hits here and there. If you'll recall, for example, Flash Gordon had a couple of added like 2 or 3 parts, another hour of watch time, and then they petted it by adding flashback scenes too, in addition to having this giant fleshed out stuff on Flash Gordon's trip to Mars and so forth, which I didn't like. This time they did not have flashbacks of the previous stuff or earlier stuff in this one too, which I think is pretty good stuff. But what they did have instead is pretty good stuff with the pacing and so forth are not as good as it, which isn't strong, as you can imagine when you're adding another hour of material to it and so forth. I'm looking at my notes here on the phone, by the way, and so forth. So they have recast the main character as the Green Hornet and Britt Reed, which I don't like. I thought that I didn't think that the first guy was that good. And so forth. I only give it a 7 because the acting wasn't as strong as some other stuff that was released that year in the superhero serial genre, like The Adventures of Captain Marvel, which is an absolute classic, released in 1942. But I don't think that this guy is better. His name is Warren Hall. For you folks, all 3 characters do return and have the same actors and actresses too, and those are Valet Cato by Chinese actor K. Luke, and then Axford's his bodyguard and secretary. He was hired. He's a former an officer, retired, who was hired by his dad as a bodyguard for Britt Reed, and he's also a journalist too, and does that role too. He is played by Wade Boteler. And the last one that comes back is Ann Nagel's secretary, Casey Chase, for you folks. The only major female character in the first one. There's another couple of female characters in this one, and then they're played by the same actress. So there is another one, but she's not that big. She's probably only 3 or 4 parts, and so forth. And there's a new investigative reporter this time. His name is Ed Lowry, and he's played by Eddie Acuff. For you folks. In addition to him, everybody else is new too. He has a similar role to the reporter from the first one, so I'm not sure why they did. If they're going to recast the main guy, why not recast him too? And so far, I'm not sure. So I don't like the Axford overacting and the stuntman and so forth interpretation by Baudelaire. I just don't feel like it's that strong. He's trying to be comic relief as the straight guy. I just don't like it that much by Baudelaire and so forth. I don't like the physical comedy with Ed Lowry. Isn't great either. And from the first episode through till the last one, I just don't like the physical comedy aspect. It feels a little too derivative and not that smart because it's the same thing every time. I just don't feel that was particularly strong and so forth. I also don't like how the pacing or the basic plot just doesn't work. Now, as a reminder, this plot, and just like the previous one, are more episodic than epic, but I just don't feel that it works. How he escapes, again, there are no spoilers from this, but how he escapes the various issues that are happening and so forth, I just don't feel like they made sense, and what happens afterwards, I don't feel makes sense either. Remember, this is a regular guy, right? in cliffhanger serials, right? And so forth. So I'm giving this a 5 out of 10 for you folks. So basically what I like to do is, instead of giving like the spoiler deep dive, is the first few, minutes of each serial from the first part and so forth. So if you recall, this is a guy who inherited his newspaper kingdom from the Sentinel from his dad, who died recently. He's young. His name is Britt Reed, so he has a lot of money, just like Batman, but he works in media just like Superman and Lois Lane. And so he has sort of a synergy of the two, but he's more Batman. He's setting out as a vigilante for justice to help the misfortunate and to go up against the giant crime bosses and racketeers that are happening in the area, and that'll happen again in the second part too. So that's the main character and concept. And then what happens, he's on vacation and a managing editor has been injured, and he's hired another temporary guy while he's in the hospital getting a broken leg repaired. And that guy is Wagner, is in the racketeer business, particularly in the lottery and so forth. And he's been placed there and so forth. And so he is definitely not a good guy. You'll find that out very, very soon in the first 5 or 6 minutes. It's not a secret, right? But again, what happens with him in the first plot, I'll leave it to you. Again, that's more episodic and so forth. Interested in checking it out and so forth. This is of its time from 1941. For example, K-Luke's Kato was originally Japanese in this radio play that this is based on. They changed him to Korean because of the increasing Japanese hostilities and so forth after World War II. His character in the radio play would go back to being Japanese. He's a brilliant guy, but he's definitely more limited, even though he is played by East Asian, which is good because Charles Middleton, who plays Ming the Merciless, is definitely in yellowface. So that's not good. And he's dressed up like Fu Manchu, and that's not good. So I appreciate that they actually do have it, but there's still some limitations with that too. Also, the way females are here too are not good at all either. So I definitely don't appreciate the sort of misogyny from the era too. Just a heads up, in case you're going in wide and open and so forth. It's definitely of its time. Just a heads up, but it's fine if you're interested in it. I like going through these things and giving you those notes for those who are interested in it ahead of time for that sort of context and so forth. So there you are. I'll go ahead and leave it to you. This is a classic serial, heavily influential. It had a lot of stuff. If you recall, the Green Hornet Strikes Again. Green Hornet from a year ago did well enough to have a sequel the next year. That was longer, and it was, good. It had a comic. It had some reissues on TV that did some good stuff, and he has a mid-60s serious take on it for kids, and then also a TV show. And then also the movie in 2011, which I haven't seen either of those two. I've only seen these two serials for folks. But I do like it. And so forth. So it's definitely influential then. Remember that serials sold seats during this time. For example, if you went in on a Saturday, like we're dedicating to this, if you went in on a Saturday, you would be you would typically go in with your entire community, your family, everybody, your school. Everybody would go to the local theater for a few hours, and they'd be there for several features, an A feature, a B feature, 2 serials, one before and then one after the end. That kind of gripped people and brought them back to the theaters. Some shorts like cartoons and trailers and newsreels too would be shown. So that's where you got that stuff too. It was a heavy thing with an intermission in between for people to talk about it and then talk about it again at the end. Particularly, ideally, that's when you have your key serial, and that's what people talk about. The serials, not the A movie or the B movie, but they would typically be talking about the serials, right? That what brought them back. The cliffhangers. How's that guy going to survive? That explosion or falling off of a cliff, right? Those sorts of things. So what's going to happen, and how's our guy going to survive? That was the key of selling movie tickets during the era, and this is a lost way of telling stories because we still have movies, we still have TV shows. Although TV shows have changed a lot since streaming, but we don't have movie serials anymore, right? And I think that's a sad thing. So that's why I dedicate this Saturday. They're going over the forgotten arts of serials. As a reminder, this channel's name is The Worst Thing About New Books, right? It's a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who plays it right into this, because that quote says, the worst thing about them was that they kept us from reading the old ones, the old classics, the things that we should be reading, the things that are better by far. So we have that obsession with new stuff. And I feel like in our obsession with new, we have forgotten the old stuff that's heavily influential from the classic era. And hence this too, for you folks. That's where my obsession comes from. So there you are. So if you enjoyed this video, why not hit the like button, the bell icon, if you're feeling frisky, the subscribe button, and then let your friends know. Superhero friends, Green Hornet friends, serial friends, just old stuff friends. Let them know. And then finally, I want to pause just to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video, right? Because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's incredibly humbling. And I appreciate it so much. So once again, have a great day and thanks.